Jeez, sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. Good old internet.
But
Um,
Stevie and Tom helped me drill down into that, and we've, I think, worked out that it's just because I stay up too late and I don't like more because I'm constantly tired.
yeah, and you've got the kids, and yeah, there's that. So, yeah, there's a lot of reasons, but it is a natural thing. So there's a few things working for us and against us there. We've got two different body clocks. We've got a body clock that's called the circadian rhythm. You've probably heard of that. The circadian rhythm is controlled by the release of actually no, it's not. It's controlled. Oh, I'm getting a mental blank. It's controlled by literally the clock. So the you it's like a switch in your head that basically says, okay, now it's time to wake up, and now it's time to go to sleep. And that usually takes about 6 days to reset. So if you ever travel overseas, to get over your jet lag, it's about 6 days to get back to some sort of normal. So it can be reset, but it is a biological clock that actually works through our system. It usually it works on light, so it's a light sensitive response in our brains. So that's the natural rhythm. We also have a chemical rhythm that's created by adenosine. Sorry, I had to think about that. So adenosine. So adenosine is a chemical that's slowly released from the time we wake up, and that chemical's purpose is to make us feel sleepy. So as we get to late in the afternoon, if we've got a good buildup of adenosine, then our brains will actually feel sleepy and we'll want to go to sleep. Now, those two systems do not always marry up. Okay, things we can do chemically to stop adenosine attaching to the receptors in our brain are drink coffee. Okay, so caffeine actually attaches to those same receptors and blocks adenosine. So it basically pushes our chemical clock backwards. Some people can consume a lot of caffeine and not have the same effect as others, but generally speaking, that's how caffeine works. So just knowing that, the actual question I wanted to ask you, knowing when your peak time is, what do you do in your peak time? So what in your morning, so let's say you get to work, for Tom and Stevie, your peak time is in that first few hours of the morning. What tasks do you allocate to yourself in the morning to get the most done? Is it chasing emails? Is it getting other stuff done? What do you do, Tom?
For me, it's a bit of a routine. The way our structure works, on the operations side, you can spend anywhere up to a couple of hours doing the same thing every day in the morning. So I don't really get to choose to do this, and this, you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
On days where I do, it will be back to that to-do list. I prioritize what is most important, and I'll get whatever I feel is most important or urgent out of the way.
Yeah, that's really good. No, I like that. Stevie, what do you do in those first few hours of the day?
Cleaning up my emails. I only like emails sitting in my inbox if I have something to follow up or to action. So it's cleaning up those, as well as just getting in and doing those couple of things that have been nigging at me that I haven't had time for. Okay. And then anything that's urgent.
So again, that's probably because that's the quiet time. You're not getting interrupted by others, and you can just get stuff done. Okay. And Sarah, in the evenings, what do you allocate that time to?
I guess, cleaning, getting ready for the next day, doing this coursework sometimes.
No, always doing the coursework, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just all the little random things that during the day I don't have time for, I guess.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I asked, because what the experts say is when you're trying to prioritize your times throughout the day, what Tom does is probably spot on, in that at your peak time, you should be doing the most difficult tasks. Okay. At your peak time, you should be doing the most difficult tasks. That's because that's when your energy levels are the highest, and your ability to problem solve, to communicate, to critically analyze and think are at their peak. Your brain's basically working at its maximum capacity. Does that make sense? So what you should avoid doing though at that time, or put off until later in the day, are the things that you can do kind of automatically. So unimportant emails, for instance, writing out stuff that needs to be like reports, things like that, that don't require a lot of hard skill, they just need to be done. Or physical tasks that just need to be done. Okay, so I say that to you, but it's something you can apply to your team as well. If you've got an important project to do, then allocate time when they are at their best to do the hardest work. Don't waste time in the mornings having meetings. Now, I say that knowing that you guys do have meetings in the morning, that's okay. But the science says don't waste time unless you're there to problem solve, unless you're there to actually use your brain. If it's just a meeting that you really don't have to put a lot of focus into, either shift it forward or back. Okay. Now, this is the research saying it. If you can't make any changes to your calendar or your diary around that, then I understand. But just be aware of that, because you don't want to waste the best part of your day doing mundane tasks. Okay. We do have a second wind. That's usually because we've had some food around lunchtime and it's processed. And so we get this second wind of a little bit more energy throughout the last bit of the day. But that generally it's not generally, it's never as high as your main peak. Now, if you then get to 9 o'clock and you have another peak, I would hazard a guess to say, naturally speaking, even though you might feel that last peak down here, Sarah, it will be a peak and you'll be able to get stuff done, but you won't necessarily be as high as these other times in the day. Just naturally speaking. Some people are, but it's very rare. Very, very rare. So that's why I just thought I'd highlight that. Okay. So in our workbooks, we have a little look at our day. And what I'd like you to have a think about is your typical day. So on page 52, now you've kind of said it to me already. And this one has to be filled out by hand. I don't have any sort of magical way of drawing a line into this particular book. So just by hand, if you could draw an energy line that most resembles your energy throughout the day. So it could look just like that one, or in your sake, Sarah, you might have that third little bump at the end or something like that, or maybe you don't have one at the start. But just draw a line that represents when you've got your 100% energy, and then when you're feeling low and that sort of thing, okay? Yes, Stevie?
Sorry, when you say line, I'm hearing straight in my head. It's totally not a straight line, is it?
No, it's like that one we got on the screen. The screen there.
Just make sure.
And it's during the workday. So Tom, when you said that you wake up bounding out of bed during your holidays or time off, we were just talking about the workday at the moment. Yep.
I have to do it later. My internet stuff's on when I come home. I'm on doing digitally.
Oh, okay, you are. Oh, okay, that's good. Yeah, so Stevie, similar to the graph, you got the 2 peaks there, but a slightly larger peak after that 9 a.m. there, or 9 p.m. Sarah, that's good.
And I've got something ready.
Okay.
Are you going to annotate it?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay, it's just all downhill after 9 a.m.
Sort of. When I'm working,
I'm asleep by then.
When I'm not working, it dips down around the noon to 6ish.
Yeah.
And it probably goes back up to that same energy level after 6ish.
So there are ways around it. As I mentioned, you can chemically alter it. You can also do things like like set up your diet so it works better. So on page 51 at the top there, quality and quantity of sleep are deadly important. That's why it's the top of the list. Quality and quantity. They say you can survive okay on between 6 and 8 hours. The experts are out a little bit on what is the premium amount because everyone's slightly individual. But if you have broken sleep, like regularly broken sleep, and I know with kids it's a thing, then your cognitive levels the next day will never get to that peak. Okay, just can't, because you haven't refilled the petrol tank overnight. Sleep serves a few purposes, but 2 very important ones from a workplace perspective. It does dissipate your adenosine, so it allows your brain to actually start working. What you have are these delta waves that slowly wash through your brain and literally wash out the antioxidants out of your brain. Okay, all the every single time a neuron fires, there's some remnants from it. Okay, now without sleep, the your spinal fluid, which is what it basically goes through to flush out your brain, doesn't have enough cycles to actually flush it all out. So you face the next day with some gunk still in there. That's a nice way to think about it anyway. If you have a good night's sleep, then that is washed out well, and it goes back into your bloodstream, and you get to get rid of the gunk, so to speak, and you'll be able to hit that peak. The other thing it does is it allows you to form memories. Okay, so if you've had a week on a project, or you're trying to study or whatever, then if you get a good night's sleep after studying, then what sticks in your working memory is slowly processed by your hippocampus, which is kind of a little horseshoe thing in the sort of center bottom of your brain, and that starts to push the various memories into where they need to be stored. Okay, without sleep, that doesn't happen, and much research has been done to show that if you have a lack of sleep, your memory starts to go out the window. Okay, you just can't recall things from the previous day to any sort of accuracy. So they are two incredibly vital reasons why you should try very hard to get good sleep. Now, I know BMA put a lot of emphasis on that, especially from the safety aspect, but also just in the quality of life aspect. Okay, so really think about how you manage your sleep. Diet is the next most important one. That's why that's second on the list. Garbage in, garbage out. You've all heard it. The biggest killer out there really at the moment is sugar. So much research has been done lately on the sugar's effect on your body. As humans, as I mentioned, we did evolve to deal with sugar, and sugar is a great thing when we can get it. But generally speaking, we were walking around the plains looking for fruit or something like that. That would be our sugar hit. Now we got sugar in everything. And so our bodies aren't used to being able to process that much sugar, and it causes inflammation in joints, it causes issues with sleep, and it actually shortens your lifespan. Okay, so it's not a great thing. We think of sugar as just being all sorts of fun and games because it's all in pretty colored lollies when we eat them, but it's something you should really watch. Our bodies aren't designed to have as much sugar as they intake these days. Okay. Other than that, it's just back to the standard diet stuff. So your meat and veg. If you're a vegan or something, then you get your proteins from other places. But just make sure you have protein, you have all your vitamins and minerals. Easiest way to check on that is get an annual blood test at a doctor and just say where your levels are at. I was quite tired at the sort of mid through last year, and I just couldn't work out why I was tired. I don't get really great sleep, so I do admit that based on other things, but what they found was my iron levels are really low. Now, women usually get quite low iron levels for biological reasons. However, do you like that? See, that's nice, just biological reasons. However, the effect is the same. If you have low iron levels, it's very hard for your body to process energy, and therefore you just feel tired. So get yourself an annual blood test. Doesn't matter how old or young you are. Check out your levels and work on your diet to suit that. This will all help you with managing your prime time, your energy levels throughout the day. The last two, fitness levels, incredibly important. We've already discussed that physical exercise is the only thing that is scientifically proven to reduce depression and anxiety. The only thing. You can have pills, you can have all sorts of other stuff, but at the end of the day, having some sort of fitness regime, even if it's just walking regularly, will improve your heart, will improve your blood, or the way you process things through your blood, and of course, it'll keep your energy levels up. And lastly, environmental influences. Okay, so if you're on a 12-hour shift, that's an environmental factor. If you're having to drive a long way to get to work, that's an environmental factor, things like that. These are sometimes less in your control, but just be aware that they have an impact on your energy levels. Okay, so on that page where you got to draw your little graph, below that it says, what should I be doing when I've got these areas? So if you're between 75 and 100% energy, they talk about this is a great time to be problem solving. So brainstorming, initiating new work, creative thinking, planning, strategic thinking, etc. Now I've got a gap in there for you to write in what you might be able to do during those periods, but we'll do that after, okay? That's not something we'll do right now. But before you hand your book in, I want you to think of 2 or 3 things that you could do when you're at that peak performance. Now, for you, Tom, you mentioned that you've got a couple of hours worth of work that you have to do each morning. Fine, pop that in there, okay? Because that's when you're at your peak, pop it in there. When you're between 50 and 75% energy, that's okay. You can get good work done then. So it's a good time to focus on routine tasks. So the cleaning, the attending meetings that aren't problem-solving meetings, doing emails, that sort of thing, okay? And then finally, when you've got that 0 to 50% energy, avoid anything that requires sophisticated thought or high levels of concentration. Okay, so you draw a line through your graph at this middle point. Okay, and through these times, think about what you can do that's not going to take a lot of mental energy. A quick fact is that your brain represents about 3% of your body weight, but uses up to 20% of its energy. Okay, so your brain is the most energy consuming organ in your body, more than all the muscles in your body, or any one particular muscle anyway. Okay, so if you think about that, if you're concentrating on something, trying to problem solve, it's burning through energy. So think about every single neuron has to fire. So it's an electrical signal. It has to squirt out various chemicals. Those little neurons in there have to go and find other neurons to connect to. That's energy being consumed at a great rate of knots. Okay, so just be very, very wary of that. If you try to overdo it at the end of the day, what actually happens is your curve drops faster. Okay, so that's good for you. Like, you can manage that, but think about your team as well. Think about how you can then convey that to your team. Make sure they're getting sleep. Make sure they're eating right. Don't ask them to work on a really difficult project in the last 2 hours of a Friday afternoon. Okay, you're not going to get anything done, or not what you want to get done anyway. Any comments before I talk about managing stress? Any sort of feedback? No, everyone's good. Okay. So managing stress, this is the graph on the right-hand side. You'll see performance and demands. So as your demands peak from left to right, you go through this period of eustress in the middle, where you can actually perform really well. Okay, eustress is when you've got just enough stress, there's just enough adrenaline in your body, there's just enough cortisol in your body to actually get stuff done. That's where you want to be. If you're understressed or overstressed, understressed is pretty low, but that's when you start to procrastinate. That's when you start to feel a bit lethargic and start to feel, okay, well, I'm not getting my performance done here. I can feel that I haven't got enough motivation to go out and do something. Okay, that's understressed. Overstressed, I'm sure we've all been there. So what's an example of overstress that you may have had in the last, I don't know, 6 to 12 months, Sarah? And how did you deal with it, more importantly?
Work related?
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be.
I would say work related, where we found that we were actually had a lot of employees sitting in our org chart that weren't our employees, and got the kind of why, and then what are you going to do about it? And it needs to be done by the end of the day.
Yep.
Okay. So that's pretty stressful.
So you had a deadline thrown at you that was quite a lot of work, and you were thinking, how the hell am I going to get all this squished in? Okay. So you get that feeling of slightly overwhelmed. Okay. I'm slightly overwhelmed by the amount of work that I think I need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stevie, can you think of a time when you were overstressed?
I think it was just when I first started in this role, COVID happened, so I had to work from home, and I didn't really know much about my role, so I couldn't really help. And then coming back to the office, when things started ramping up, it got quite busy really quickly. And I was still learning, and so I've gone from a slow pace to next minute straight up. And that it was not, I want to say overstressed, it was just more overwhelming, but work for it.
Yeah, when you feel overwhelmed, that's your body signaling that you're overstressed. Sometimes we can rise to it. Like if we're at that peak energy level and you've just got a lot to do, you're suddenly thrown on your plate, but you can rise to it. That's fine. That's still stress, but it's eustress. You can deal with it and you can get stuff done. Oftentimes, if that coincides with your prime time, then you're very, very productive. The worst thing it can do is coincide with one of your really low times because you don't even have the energy to, like the brain energy, to be able to process how to overcome some of these tasks or stresses. Yeah. Tom, how about a time when you might have been under stressed? Have you ever experienced being under stressed and not motivated to do stuff?
Went on parental leave. Before that, it was very stressful. I had a lot to do to close out. Completed it, clean slate. Came back the start of January.
Yeah.
And after about a month, so 2 swings, I ended up sitting down with my supervisor and just telling him basically, I'm not completing any work. I don't have the energy to or the motivation to. Exactly what you just said, really exact words
Okay.
that we were using together. And basically just came down to I had not enough, I guess called stress, workload to keep me going because everything was ticked off before I left for good reason. And about coming back, there wasn't nothing really to come back to other than my routine job.
Okay. Yeah, so we can, if we go in there with expectations that we're going to have some work to do, but it's not there, we can just give over to that and go, okay, well, there's nothing to do. And as soon as you actually say that to yourself, your levels of stress decrease, which is a good thing you'd think, but no, then you're working in this under stressed situation where you're not actually feeling productive. And that actually can, in some people, cause anxiety, believe it or not, if you don't feel like you're actually being productive for the day. So on that note, guys, I've got a little activity for you here. If you could go into the next page and just pop a few points down on page 54. The first one just asks you to identify activities, people, or situations that can cause you distress, and just maybe reflect on those sources to uncover what could be the underlying cause. And then what you currently do to minimize stress and maybe what you could do. And then finally, what can you do to address that underlying cause? Now, you guys don't seem too stressed, so I'm sure you're fine, but but have a think about it. So I've got maybe 5 minutes up our sleeves. Put down what you can. Are you finished, Sarah? Okay. Just give another 60 seconds. Okay, excellent. So one of the things we can do to be more productive, of course, is to automate parts of our day. So if we're finding that things are causing us stress and we can get to the underlying cause and address it, that's great. One way to address one of those causes is to see if that task or that person or that situation can be automated in some way. And by automated, I don't mean you employ a robot to do it or an IT to do it. I mean, can it be done without you having to put extra mental energy into it? Okay, extra mental energy. So I've got a couple of interesting things just in the text here that I'll quickly read through to you. It says there was a study that followed 1,100 court decisions over a course of a year and found that prisoners who appeared early in the day received parole about 70% of the time, while those that came late in the evening had less than a 10% chance of landing parole. Okay, so what that means is, and I've written it after that, I said, look, every day that we make thousands of decisions, small decisions, by automating those parts of the day that can eliminate the need to make low value decisions, thus saving our decision energy for the high value ones, is incredibly important. So these people, these poor parolees or prisoners, felt absolutely ripped off that by the end of the day, these people at the courthouse were just so over it that they were saying, no, 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 okay? Very bad situation, very unfair, not even. And the other quote that I've got here is from Barack Obama, who said, I wear only grey or blue suits. I don't want to make decisions about what I'm eating or wearing. I need to focus, or you need to focus your decision-making energy. You need to routine yourself. Okay. Another famous person who's known for that is Albert Einstein, who famously never did up his shoelaces, only wore the same pair of trousers every day. He had better things to spend his energy on. Okay. Now you do too. Absolutely. So think about the things you can automate in your day and maybe jot a couple down. I'll give you one example from my life. You probably are sick of seeing me in my spec training shirt, but for me, I don't have to think about it. I put my spec training shirt on. I know I'm working that day. The only time I'll change this is on weekends when I don't want to wear the logo necessarily, or if I'm teaching or presenting in the city where I might put a suit on, and that's about it. So nice and simple. I don't have to think about it. So can you think of things, it doesn't necessarily have to be work. A good example that a lot of people tell me is that they prepare their meals for the week. Okay, so they don't have to think about it. So that meal preparation is another big thing. So have a think about 2 or 3 things you might want to put in there just to take away the need to make a decision. Okay, so what's something you wrote down, Sarah?
I've got set up automatic reports to run in LMS so that I don't have to go in and do them manually when I need them.
Perfect, yeah.
I also had fill up my car on the weekends because that's something I'm particularly hopeless at. Like, we'll run out of fuel once a month at least.
Oh no.
And automatic bill payments.
That's a big one. Banking, personal banking, that can really get in the way. That's a good one. Stevie, do you have anything else?
I had to put meal planning just before you said it. I typed it in because usually when I'm on top of it, it's a good thing. Like when I shop, write down what I need shopping and that, it's all good. But I have found lately with being busy, both my husband and I in the afternoon, like, what do you want to make? And that, and we sit there for ages just trying to think of something when it could be simple. And also just basically checking my calendar at the beginning of the week, setting everything in and reviewing it at the beginning of the week so I know what's happening for the rest of the week.
Oh, great. Yeah, well, we even talked about that. That's a great idea. There is, I know we don't do it in Moranbah, I don't think anyway, but the online shopping idea for groceries is continually taking off. Why? Because we plan it. We don't go there and make impulse decisions and that sort of thing, and basically again wasting brain power. It also takes us a lot longer if we go down there. I mean, we might treat it as a bit of a day out, so that's another thing. It might have other purposes to serve, but generally speaking, if those sorts of things are just routine, and you don't really want to have to spend the time and energy doing them, you can automate them. So Woolies, for instance, once you do your basic list, you can repeat the list every week or every fortnight or every month for all your main things, and then just tack on a couple of extra things when you need to. So it, again, takes out the decision making. Of course, you know, we're human. We like a bit of variety. So, you know, we like to maybe change things up every now and then. But if the majority is done, then that saves you a lot of time. How about you, Tom?
One I got here was part of my role. We'll conduct ARO duties more often, which is my what I'm employed to do. I've obviously picked up other things along the way now, but I said conduct ARO duties more often throughout the day. At times, it can involve high stressful moments conducting ARO duties. But for the most part, it's good spending alone time in the car with yourself, airside. Yeah, and possibly listening to some audible that's at certain times when you're rowing.
Oh,
well.
good on you. Yeah,
it's what I used to do.
Yeah.
Just haven't been able to get out a lot. It's a good way to save energy, especially not utilizing your brain a lot.
No,
you normally do.
I hear you, and that's good. I have that problem whenever I listen to an audiobook, especially if it's something I really enjoy. I pay too much attention to it. There was this book it's called Powerful Teaching. So it's more about I think I'm supposed to be learning. And I found myself having to stop the car and stopping the book and going, shit, I have to write this down because it was too good information. And then I actually decided not to listen to that book until I was ready. So I have to actually make time in my day to listen to the book, which is unusual, but it's unusual. So most of the time I can just listen to something in the background. That's quite nice. I'm good like that with podcasts. Yeah, well, that's good. Good examples. All right, folks. Well, that's automating your day. A part of that then flows onto this concept of maintenance, maintaining yourself, maintaining your professional competence. And the only way we can maintain our competence is to know where we're kind of at the moment. The self-assessment capability test that I've got on page 56 has some blank fields in there for you to add your own things that you might think you want to assess yourself on. But for the purposes of this assessment now, if you could just go through the ones that I've already created there and give yourself a ranking of 1 to 5, saying 1, no, you don't, 2, not really, 3, somewhat, 4, adequately, and 5, yes, all the time. Just rank yourself against each of those management skills and knowledge. You can just tap on each one and it'll tick the box. Okay, nice and simple. Now, with any sort of self-rater thing like this, I mean, you know you better than anybody else does. So they're pretty good. They're pretty good to use. Anything you're scoring yourself a 3 or less than, that's obviously an area you believe you need to improve upon. Did anybody score 3 or less than anything there, or you're all pretty good? Couple, yeah, okay. I won't drill down into it, but if you did, it says reflect on this assessment across the page. Reflect on this assessment and note down any areas that you'd like to improve or seek out new information on. Maybe for those of you who didn't have any 3s, if you had a 4, maybe there's room for improvement. So maybe just look at a couple of those. Just jot down 1 or 2 things over the page there that you can seek out improvement on. Would anybody like to share?
I've got, so I know about all the new and coming technology that affect my workplace. BMA's really good with keeping up to date, but I've scored myself a 3. Not that I don't care, honestly, it's not that I don't care. I appreciate all the effort that goes into it and continuous improvement. Just, I don't want to give myself energy to little things like that. I don't know if that sounds rude or not, but
no, not at all.
I understand the concept behind it and appreciation that I'll give to that. But yeah, just I don't really get involved around the emails that get sent out or team discussions when it comes to updates. And like the new printer we got, I didn't even know Stevie was hassling me a bit about getting my TAMS card ready and all that. Just a bit slack there on things like that. And then I just put also, I have a professional development plan, blah, blah, blah. I scored a 4, but I just put, I could improve time management, just things that we learned from this course.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Setting a goal, short-term, long-term, things like that, prioritizing and time management.
Right. Well, even just thinking about the emails and stuff that come through with new developments and stuff, that's not something you should be spending your prime time on. You can maybe allocate some time when you're feeling a bit tired, or you've done a big job or something. You can then have a look at that stuff where you don't need that much mental energy. You can just sort of review it and it sticks in. Yeah, so that's a good example of both time management and use of your energy. Yeah. Anybody else want to share anything?
I had only 4s and 5s, but I am capable of clearly communicating a request to a colleague or team member. So sometimes I know what I mean, as you can tell from this course, but it's not necessarily what they're hearing. So I've just got seek feedback from colleagues to better enhance my communication skills.
Great. Yeah, that's good. And in fact, we're going to go right into that just next, would you believe? So it's a good segue. But before we do, to finish off what you were saying, sorry.
No, you're right. And then the next one was, I'm capable of dealing with any eventuality that might occur in my role. And I just wrote, enhance my knowledge on timetables across all sites to better ensure I am understanding the issues with the on-call concerns and make more educated decisions.
Great. And Sarah, anything you'd like to add?
I just had the same as Tom. I had my development plan and the technology one. And again, I'm the same. It's not that I don't care. It's just I don't have the time or the energy to put into getting up to date with it, I guess. And then I think there's a part of me that's a little bit dark and twisty about some of the technology that we bring into the business as well, where it's not been super successful. So you kind of just go, oh, I'll worry about that when it happens, or do the next update.
Yeah. No, I totally empathize with that, especially when they start talking about AI and all sorts of things. Yeah. Okay,
and then
folks.
I think, my development plan was the same from this course. Just it's been really clear to me that it's not structured enough.
Okay. Well, we've only got about 10 minutes left, and there's only a couple more topics, but we'll go through them relatively quickly. Now, Stevie, you mentioned feedback. That's why I thought, oh, good. This leads beautifully into this. There's 2 tools that I'll mention about getting feedback. The first one is a 360 review. Have you guys ever had a 360-degree review? Okay. Now, they are, some are good, some aren't so good, okay? There's reasons for that, but a 360 review is what they call a multi-rater system. So it means that your peers, your subordinates, and your superiors all give you feedback. Now, it's supposed to be anonymous, and allows you to sort of go through the information very objectively and see areas where you're doing well and areas where you could improve upon. The reason it doesn't always go to plan is that you might have a personality clash with someone at your workplace and they just go in hell for leather because they know it's anonymous, and that can really tear you down. And that happened to a colleague of mine in the police force who was torn down by someone, and she knew who it was, even though it was supposed to be anonymous. And that had such a bad impact on her, she didn't want to ever do one of these again. So that's the negative side. The positive side is it does give you objective. It gives you feedback from people that you wouldn't necessarily go and ask directly. So it can give you a rather holistic view. Like you might be really great with your subordinates, but not so good managing up, or really great with your colleagues, but your subordinates don't know what's going on, things like that. And it's only until you sort of do that sort of review that you find out this information. So you can do your own 360. You can literally go to people and ask. That's another way to do it. Another tool I've got in the book is called the LIFT tool, which is a leadership instant feedback tool. And also good old SurveyMonkeys. Okay, so that tool you can look up if you want. It does cost to use that, so I'm not going to say go and use it. But there are other ways. You can simply just ask for feedback from people around you. Okay. The best way to do that is like with the other written feedback we talked about with customer service, which is to use some sort of survey so that you don't ask people different questions. You get the same question asked to different people, and then you get a variation of their responses, and that'll help you. Okay, so that's helping you as a leader, and that will also maybe, just maybe, highlight some things that you didn't even consider in the way you manage your time, manage your team, manage performance. Okay. The other thing I've discussed here is about feedback on emotional intelligence. The reason I put that in there is because it can be quite different. It's more subjective because we're talking about emotions, we're talking about how people interact, and we can have a variation. Like you could get along really well with someone and just not get along with another person, yet you're the same person. So why is that the case? Well, it's around emotional intelligence and how you manage that. As we discussed in the people management course, and Sarah, you and I will be covering this, but there are 4 parts to emotional intelligence, which is understanding yourself, understanding others, regulating yourself, and positively influencing others. They're the 4 domains of emotional intelligence. So with that in mind, you can collect feedback by having informal discussions with staff, managers, and colleagues, questionnaires, have meetings with staff and managers, a diary, so a good self-reflection, maybe at the end of the week or at the end of each day, depending on how frequently you want to jot some words down, just to say, you know, well, we actually did it as a part of the assessment for emotional intelligence. We actually asked you to monitor yourself over the period of, you know, however long it took, to fill in how you actually interacted with people at work. So you've done that. Those, you know, well, you haven't yet, Sarah, but you will. But there's a diary to fill in, and that allows you to reflect just how you're going with your emotional intelligence, because it's one of those things that you're never going to be perfect at, and you're always growing. The only reason you wouldn't grow your emotional intelligence is if you actually make the choice not to. Okay. So this all leads us on to the very last thing, which is networking and types of networking. Networking has got a bad rap. We think of, I don't know about you, but I think of, you know, turning up in a suit to a place you don't really want to be, talking to people you don't want to talk to, okay? But that's not what networking is. Networking is about making professional connections with other people. That's it, making professional connections with other people. The types of networks we have are operational. So these are the people we deal with on a regular basis, usually built around short-term tasks or goals or demands. And they usually include our work friends, okay? We have our personal network. These are groups of individuals outside who you just maybe share interests with, okay? So your friends, basically. And then we have what we call strategic networks. These are networks that we specifically go out to create in order to improve our position within the organization, or improve the organization's position within its field, okay? So operational, personal, strategic. Can they all overlap? Absolutely. That's why I've drawn it as a Venn diagram here. They can all overlap. You can have one person who's like a mentor to you, but they're also a good personal friend, and they also maybe work at a company that supplies you guys, and therefore there's a strategic component to that. So what sort of networking do you currently do? Yeah, what sort of networking do you currently do? Who wants to go first? Sarah. So what professional relationships do you currently build and grow?
Well, in my role, I deal with a lot of other teams in professional capacity. So like talent acquisition, HR, the deployments, so operational teams, the training teams,
Great, yep.
and then vendors like our RTO that we use often.
Good, and it's important to keep that relationship positive. So
Yeah.
part of networking is to make sure it's a positive relationship. Excellent. Okay, Stevie, anybody else you currently network with?
Mine's operational as well. It's just in my role, previous role, and even this role, I've got to meet a lot of people and just maintain and build on those relationships. Sorry, build it and maintain those relationships, working relationships. They come to me, I come to them, or I don't, and I hold on to like all the favors I've done.
Ah, yes, good one. Yep.
And that can also, and sometimes honestly, because spend most of my time at work, these are the people that I do tend to talk to outside of work as well.
Yeah, cool. And
I have LinkedIn. I don't know, people add me. I don't do it.
We'll talk about that in a sec. How about you, Tom?
I don't really know. Never really put much thought into it.
So you have your work colleagues. So you've got your operational network, I suppose. Do you ever offer advice or gain advice from those people?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's a professional network right there. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. As long as you're giving and receiving advice or help from someone, then that's a network. Okay. It's like, think of it like a big web and everyone's connected. Okay. Now, the bigger your network, the more influence you have. Okay. It sounds very social media-y, but it kind of is. But the bigger your network, the more influence you have. So if you've got a good operational network and maybe a good personal network and they overlap, and you've started to build a good strategic network of key partners like the RTO that you deal with, Sarah, or maybe some suppliers or whatever, then they know you, they know who you are and what you're capable of. And therefore you get called upon more often as an expert potentially, or as someone who is good to know. And if you set yourself up as someone who's good to know, then you won't help but actually improve or increase your influence. Okay, so you're having a good quality network and one that you can actually work on, then you will actually gain. Well, you'll gain within your workplace. I won't put too many words around it. So at the bottom of page 59, I've got a few examples. So your workplace groups, I have thrown LinkedIn there as a professional network. I've also got industry groups. So you've got the Resource Training Council, you've got the unions, you've got all sorts of groups there that you can be a part of. Academic groups, if you're in an area where maybe you need to find out the latest of something, then you might want to also include some people from the local university in there as well. And then you've got meetup groups who are more around specific interests or in a various locations. So meetup is just an online tool that you can look up interests of your own, and you can meet strangers and go and maybe do something that you enjoy doing. Like it could be a hiking group, or it could be a sailing group, or it could be a four-wheel driving group. It doesn't really matter, but that's another way of increasing your personal network, okay? And professional, there are also professional groups in there as well. And the last key on page 60 is that you have to be active in them. So from what I just understood there, Sarah, you're probably a little active in it, but from what I understood there, most of you guys aren't going out of your way to be active in a network. I do encourage you to do that, even if it's just starting to, because as I said, you do build your influence, you build your, what they call your social capital. Okay, so that's your value within the organization. And if you're building your value, that makes you more employable. It makes you more desirable for promotions and things like that. So Stevie, you mentioned that you would like to go into a superintendent or a supervisor role. The only way you can do that is really make yourself very important. Okay, how do you make yourself important? Do your job well, but make sure you're connected to the right people. Because I know it sounds strange, but most employment, I won't say most, senior employment, definitely. Most senior employment happens through word of mouth. Okay, people get to know you. They say, "I'd recommend Stevie for that role." Why? Oh, because X, Y, and Z. Okay, if they
That's
don't
how I
know
got
who
in
you
this
are,
role.
there you go. Yeah, if they don't know who you are, then you're not even going to appear on the list. So it's called personal branding these days. There's courses on it. There's a whole thing. But I'm a big fan of it. I had to take a bit of a screenshot of my own bloody LinkedIn there, but that LinkedIn site that I've had for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. I don't know how long I've had it, but 6 figures worth of business comes out of that regularly. Okay, just from referrals. Okay, and it's good. It sets people up. People know you. Like we advertised for 2 roles, as I mentioned, and we didn't even need to advertise. I posted something on LinkedIn and I got 2 people call me immediately, both whom I know in the industry, who are fantastic, and we basically put a letter of offer in the mail within a week. So, you know, that's what you want. That's what a good network allows you to do. Okay. So the activity on the bottom just asks you what current networking you do and what other opportunities you might have. So if you would like to, maybe dash something in there, what you might want to do. Stevie, I love your smile. You're like, yeah, maybe I'll have a look at Facebook. But remember, yeah, professional networks are professional networks for that reason. Don't go sullying the waters or muddying the waters, whatever they call it. Okay, folks, we're down to the last page and a bit. And I wanted to end off by looking back at you. Okay, so what will be your competitive advantage after doing a diploma of leadership and management? I've just got a question there, and that's really something you can ponder afterwards. This isn't something that I'm really going to assess, but it just asks, reflect on your industry. What are 2 developments that will impact your role in the next 5 years? And where would you need to go to find out more about each of these developments? The reason I put that in there is it makes you think about the job you're in, makes you think about where it might be going, and setting yourself up for that eventuation. So if you do know where it's going, and you do know a bit about it, a good example in my silly industry is online learning and augmented reality and virtual reality, and how people use it or don't use it. I need to know enough about that so that I'm not left behind. Okay, even as a business owner, I've got to make sure I do that. If I was employed by somebody else, then maybe I'd also want to know that so I could increase my value within that organization. Okay, so that's my example, but for you, it'll be up to you. What's the value for you based on some things that are probably going to influence your role in the next couple of years. Okay, so to end the workshop, I have a summary of the day on page 62, or the last 3 days, I should say. And what we covered was, we started with organizational risk. We looked at what organizational risk was rather than just frontline risk. Included things like stakeholder communication, how to evaluate and treat risks, and more importantly, how to communicate risks to your team. We looked at how to allocate work, how to monitor productivity, including safe work practice and also work environment. So we looked at the PESTEL analysis there. Okay. We then went on to how to manage customer experience, which was yesterday. Those involved in it, how it improves performance of the whole organization when your customer quality service is up. And there's a lot of statistics that we shouted out there about why we would do it. And finally, we ended today on recognizing and applying the importance of managing both your own personal work priorities, stress, and networking to remain a competitive, valuable leader. Okay, so there's a lot in that. If I were you, what would I do with the next half hour other than go and pick up the kids? Is I would think about the last couple of questions that we haven't addressed yet in the knowledge test. There's only 19 questions, but there's a couple that are directed at today's topic. Even if you just answer those 2 questions before you finish up today, that's 2 less that you have to do tomorrow. Okay, so without any further ado, I will be in touch. Obviously, Sarah, you'll be meeting with me in the new year, but Stevie and Tom, this is our last face-to-face workshop, virtual workshop, but I'll be in touch, of course, and I look forward to getting your workbooks from you before Wednesday next week. and then your assessments by whatever time you decide to prioritize to get them in. Okay, but give yourself a bit of time, but don't make it too long, because what happens is it becomes the lower priority, and you do all your day-to-day first, and then that that particular deadline will come and go. And I don't want that for you. I'd rather you get it done so you can get yourself a diploma before the end of the year, which would be awesome. All right, so if there's no other questions, folks, I'll love you and leave you, and I'll be in touch on email as needed, and you can always email me. Yes, Sarah.
Much.
No problem. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys, and have a bit of luck with those last 2 questions.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Dan. Appreciate it.
Message me, Stevie, if you want to do like a study or something.
That's a good idea. It's
Like
called
you hear from me.
collaboration. Collaboration.
Yeah.
Excellent.
No, sounds
Actually,
good.
I do encourage you to do that. That's a good idea.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks, team.
I'll see you
Bye.
soon. All the best.